Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. My name is Kirk Behrendt. I get to do this and I love it. I'm so grateful. Dentistry is a very noble profession with a lot of great people and a lot of great instructors and influencers. And we talk about a lot of different things. And so my goal with this podcast is to bring you great information that helps you improve your practice in your life. And today we're going to do just that with a good friend of mine, Dr. Kwecian. And today we discover where is your vagus nerve and how your brain functions so that you can create a healthy environment and how to do all of that and why. So hope you enjoy the episode. Check it out. We'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. And my name is Kirk Behrendt. I get to interview fun people in dentistry that are great influencers, people that I really like. I enjoy being around with them. They have great lives. They do fun stuff, like go to Greece and stuff like that. I've never been there, and so my wife has that on her bucket list. And so one of those guys today I've gotten to know over many, many years. He's been a great influencer, great speaker, great teacher. I learned something from him every day, and today we're going to be examining, where is your vagus nerve? And I'm not talking about the vagus nerve in Vegas, Las Vegas type of thing. It's the other vagus nerve, which is a very important component of leadership and why that is so important to put it in the right place with my good friend, Dr. Kwecian. So Kevin, thanks for being on, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kurt. I love being here. I love being with you always. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I enjoy being with you. I mean, like I told you before we hit the go button, I always wanted to, I'm a CE junkie just like you. And I'm I don't know if I want to go into recovery over that thing, but like I enjoy it so much, I'm going to find a way to do CE for the rest of my life, just learn. And so I always learn a ton with you on this. And you're fresh off of a trip from Greece, man.
Greece. Yeah. It was not so bad. It was probably the longest vacation I've ever had, actually. I think we were there. It was actually a delayed, Kimberly and I got married in August up on Mount Rainier. And although we've both been married before, we didn't really have a honeymoon. So we called it was really a vacation moon or a honeycation or whatever it was. We sort of called it what it was. But anyway, so we decided to take a good, 11 or 12 days. Just never done that before.
Great job, buddy. Great job.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm ready to go.
So we're going to do a separate episode on the highlights and lowlights of Greece, but we'll do that another time.
Great.
But, one of the things you're talking my jam with the vagus nerve because as a leader, I've screwed up more than anybody listening to this podcast. I've made more mistakes than any human being alive. And so I want you to, number one, let's start here as where I always like to start, which is I want people to know you. I want people to know who you are. So who's Dr. Kevin Kwecian? Let's go there first.
Oh my gosh, I have made more mistakes than you. I think I win that competition. So that's exactly who I am. Kevin Kwecian always takes at least 2 or 3 times to figure out things that are obvious to everybody else. And that's what's got me here. I love what I do just like you. I love working with dentists and teams, and I get just as excited as you. I'm also, I feel like I sort of feel like we're brothers a little bit, but it's an excuse for me to learn every day something different. And whether it's if I go to AES or AACD in Chicago, even though I'm not practicing anymore, I still love it. And I love this CE, or whether it's leadership, I love it. Or whether it's going to Penke, like I teach at Penke, 3 or 4 times a year. And I need to stay abreast on that. This week is actually, not that this is a plug for Penke, although I know you love Penke. Yeah. This week is Masters Week, and I'm going to be teaching there next week. And I just got back from Greece, as we just said. And I'm really sad that I'm not there this week because I'm thinking, those are like, I would have just loved being in the room just to keep the learning going. Like I never know it all, especially in the digital world these days. And so anyway, so that's pretty much who I am. Is I'm similar to you in that I'm always learning and always growing, but mostly so I can share it, so I can be an influencer, so I can help people be happy and healthy and not so stressed out. Which,
yeah. So it's funny because as you're saying those things, so Dr. Gary Sanchez, good friend of mine also, who helps everybody figure out their why. This is for a separate podcast. If you guys have never figured out your why, it's important work to do. And I'm guessing your why is the same as mine. So I spent some time with Gary, and Gary said this: dude, your entire makeup is find a better way and share it. And I'm guessing yours is the same thing.
No. And you know that I'm a certified coach at the Y Institute. Like I've known Gary for a long time, Sanchez.
Yeah. So, and I guess we've never talked about that. So let's go there. No. So what does that mean? Yeah. Well, tell me what that means.
Well, I mean, it's, Gary, is a dentist from New Mexico, and he and I both had this passion around, as most of us do, with Simon Sinek, right? And start with why, and then there was a workbook with how to integrate your why, and Gary was so passionate about that. It sounded great, it was great, and even with the workbook, it was still hard to really integrate it. It just, and Simon even agreed. Simon said, "Yeah, you're right. So run with it." So Gary asked Simon for permission to start up the Y Institute. And when Gary was doing that, he was training coaches, and I was totally passionate about it. So I went down to New Mexico and did a couple days with them. And so I use it all the time. Everybody I work with, I send the link for their why, so I can do their why, and we find out their why, their how, and their what. Yeah. And it really helps me work with people and understand people. And mine actually is to contribute to a greater cause. So
really?
My why is contribute. Yes. It's not a better way to contribute, but ours are very similar that way.
Well, that's why you're a certified trainer and I am not. So I'm an anecdotal trainer. But I can speak to this part while you guys are the expert on helping people figure out their why. It's a very freeing day. And one of the pieces of work that I did with Gary, and this isn't what the podcast is about, but if you're listening, you'll get a sense of this. Like he told me the anecdote there's a downside when you find your why. And so you need to know what the anecdote is. So my anecdote is people I've worked with in the past often thought I was a miserable person because it was never enough. And so, and what I had to learn was the anecdote, which is, today it's good enough for today. And we'll start the climb again tomorrow. And I've used that ever since he gave that to me. And I am so grateful that I can give myself that advice through his help. Because there were times where I didn't let it go. And it wasn't, I was burning people out. I didn't know that. And so I want to circle back to that, but let's stay on topic because I can go anywhere you want to go today. You know that. And I enjoy talking to you. I learned something.
We can talk why all day long.
I didn't even know you were a certified why. I think we had talked about that, but I had no idea. So just a side note, it's important work, guys. And so if you're listening, figure it out because it makes all the other motions that you do for the rest of your life work. It really does, So
and I think that both of us know that we both live in abundance. There is enough. Right. You and I both do coaching. We both work with teams, and yet I don't consider either of us competition. We both there's plenty of different people to help. And Gary, the reason I say that is, as far as podcasts go and other people, Gary Sanchez is one of the most genuine, nicest people I've ever met.
100%.
And his podcast is great too. He interviews amazing. He's one of the best, no offense to you, because you are too. He is one of the best interviewers I've ever met.
Oh, no question.
He's genuinely curious. He's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a good podcast to go check out.
Oh, no offense on my side. Like when I was on his, I actually I almost got emotional. I'm like, dude, how did you even know that? Like, I felt like you're exactly right. He is extremely curious. He is totally into whatever the guest is saying. And I admire him all the time. And I listen to it. It's fantastic. So if you're listening, check it out over there. Gary Sanchez on the Y podcast. He's just amazing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I want to get back to you in this whole thing. And so, where's your vagus nerve? And let's talk about the why of this component. What we're going to be talking about. What is the vagus nerve? Why is it important to figure out where it is? And how could I use it as a dentist if I'm listening?
Yeah, well, the vagus nerve is what stimulates your parasympathetic tone, right? So we've got sympathetic versus parasympathetic tone, your fight, flight, or freeze versus your rest and digest. And of course, your fight, flight, and freeze is what we do naturally, instinctively, as human beings, as animals, as people in the animal, as animals in the animal kingdom. And when you're in fight, flight, or freeze, your body's natural response is to go to your amygdala, right? That's where it just tells you what to do quick. It's the synapses go so quickly. And of course, parasympathetic tone is rest and digest, and that's when you're more in your frontal cortex, your thinking person's part of your brain. You're let me think about it first before I respond so quickly. And what we know, it's been in literature for forever now, but it's making sort of a neat resurgence right now. I think a lot because of the talk that we have about neuroplasticity and retraining your brain, rewiring your brain,
right,
and how you rewire that. And part of the way you do that is to realize that in 2022, there are no saber-toothed tigers
right,
around out there, right? But our reaction when something crazy happens is like when we go back to the caveman times when there must be a saber-toothed tiger and I need to be in my amygdala, and you don't.
right.
But we don't realize that in 2022. We're safe. It's not a saber-toothed tiger, but our bodies still respond that way. And so what can we do to realize that? And in fact, I was joking with you before we got on that, maybe this is too much information, but I'm going to donate my body when I die, if they still want it,
Mm-hmm.
to science. And I think because, in dental school, we did the whole body dissection. And I feel like when they do my body, they're going to be dissecting and it's going to be time to find the vagus nerve, which is good for us, right? Parasympathetic tone, rest and digest and get in your frontal cortex. And that medical and dental students are going to be dissecting through the fascia and they're going to be like, I don't think this guy has a vagus nerve, man. I just don't think he does.
Mm-hmm.
And I have really felt that way before. And one thing that I have learned, because I hang around with really smart people, is that you can really retrain your vagus nerve.
Yeah.
When you have a whole history, and I have basically since I was a teenager, of really living in fight or flight, really far too much sympathetic tone, and it does a lot of damage to your body and to your brain. And so what can you do to change that, to regrow that? And then, although I'm rambling a little bit, what I get most excited about is how does that impact the people around you?
Right.
How does that change us as a leader?
Yeah, let's go into that. Let's say I don't know anything about this. And so, Kevin, you get a chance to see great dentists that are well-intended, that are just in fight all the time. They're running behind. The aesthetic result isn't what they expected. Their team members don't often meet their expectations. And so they're amped up and they're edgy. What does it do to the rest of the environment?
Well, exactly, because we know as animals, if I walk in and I'm in fight or flight, you don't know it. I don't tell you that I'm in fight or flight, but because you're another animal, you instinctively pick up on that. You do. It's the energy is the root. And one animal knows when another animal is especially in fight and certainly flight. And we all see freeze as well, but the other animals pick up on it. And when we pick up on it instinctively, we go, well, I guess I'm in fight or flight too. I guess we're going to battle. I guess I need to be ready for something. And the whole energy in the room changes, and we didn't really need it to be. And so if you as a leader, as a dentist, are aware of that, think about the impact you have on your team and your patients and those around you. If you walk in the operatory or into your morning huddle or into your team meeting and you're in fight or flight, everybody else is there, which means you're in your amygdala.
Yeah.
You're ready to just react quickly. Whereas if you walk in and you are aware of it, and you take, and we can talk about breathing and breathing exercises, and you had Becca Bacow on, we were talking about that as well, but you got to breathe. And when we take a few deep breaths and get back into our parasympathetic tone and get into our frontal cortex, the impact we have on the room is spectacular.
It is
And
spectacular.
everybody in the room feels it.
Yeah. And let me take you on a little journey, and you know this journey better than myself. You were an instructor at Spear Education, and so you know, Frank, probably way better than all of us here is, I saw him speak at the Practice of Excellence, I don't know, 20 some years ago. He kept mentioning this guy by the name of Brian DeRoche, and Brian DeRoche had helped him become a better human being. And so we actually did a Brian DeRoche workshop a few times, and he's so brilliant, it took us several times for us to understand it. Now, I'm going to completely paraphrase what we learned, but I started bringing other dentists to it. And what he taught me in those workshops was to change my brain. Because when you change your brain, it creates a vacuum. And I'll never forget this. Like, it creates a vacuum in the room. Your tone, your calmness creates calmness around you. And so I was also early in my marriage where it was very easy to one up each other. Oh, you up one emotion with another emotion thinking, and then he taught me how to just bring it down and change your brain. And so it was very powerful. And I'll even tell one story. There's a dentist, I won't tell you where he's from, but he said it was the most important learning of his life. And here's why. Because he had a child out of wedlock while he was in dental school. And he had a very negative feeling about the previous relationship, and it stayed back here. Through that work, he was able to change his brain, and he made the phone call one day when the child was about 18 or 19. And the child said, I've been waiting forever for this phone call. And to this day, they have the most magical relationship. And he credits that changing of the brain because he was so emotional about it and so angry and so upset in so many different ways. But changing the way we can actually change our brain through this methodology, right? Like, walk me through some of your learning in this and watching how you've watched other and even using it yourself in this process.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I know Brian pretty well. And in fact, to be quite, I guess, clear about it and forthcoming, transparent about it, I have taught with Brian before, and Brian has been my therapist and coach before.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think I refer several of my clients to Brian, and there's a couple other people. But anyway, so when you said that, I was like, of course. And so he's been doing a lot of research on this for years and trying to stay up on it. The other person, as I walk you through it, or you asked me to do that, is a lot of us follow Dan Siegel, and Dan Siegel's line is where thoughts go, energy flows, and synapse grow. Right. And that's, and if your thoughts, where your thoughts go, and it could be negative, then energy flows and synapse grow. And basically you continue to reinforce the synapse that you don't really want. It's like that muscle's already really strong, and you continue to just take steroids and keep lifting weights. Right. And that's not the muscle you want to grow it.
Right.
So the shift is, and that's where we get back into parasympathetic tone, right? And breathing is wait, that's not the synapse I want to grow. In fact, I want to cut that synapse and I want to grow a different synapse. So where thoughts go, energy flows, and synapse grow, then I want to rewire my brain.
Right.
I want to change the habit, and that's neuroplasticity.
Right.
Right. But really, when you come back down to the very beginning of how that happens for most people, it is being aware of self and aware of your sympathetic, parasympathetic tone, and what you need to do to get into parasympathetic tone, get into your frontal cortex, change the wiring in your brain.
Right. Now, let me ask you a couple questions on this, because I've been on this journey too. And again, I was on the wrong side of it. I'm like the highest I on I disc profile, which means I get emotional. I often get upset. I don't like conflict. I hate hurting people's feelings. So if you're in that area, you know how this works. And so you have a lot of great relationships, but then you also have a lot of wreckage behind you of like, I thought one thing. And so I think it's a dual journey. At least I'll be vulnerable and transparent. I did a lot of work with Brian and I loved it. And I also realized it wasn't me just changing my brain. I also had to do a lot of self-awareness, and I also had to I had to make the jump from being emotional to logical a lot. So working with a coach, which I did many years ago, it's really easy to work with a business coach because they just give you the truth. You don't spend hours and hours and hours. They'll say that doesn't work. Don't do that. That's dumb. Or that person should not be in that role. Do not do that. And you're like, oh my God, you just saved me like 10 years of my life trying to figure this out. And then, they also, and so you couple that with other things like I'm a big fan of the book Traction, which people have referred to as sophomoric, but it's very simple and logical. So I was listening it again this morning. So the journey, I'm digging what you're telling me today, because the journey for me, if you're listening, is I got out of the back of my brain. Now I still go there, but I want to stay in the front of my brain most of the day and be logical and calm and consistent. And there's science behind what I'm saying, not just me making it up every day. Do you see that there's other components? Because we certainly don't want the people on this podcast to be listening and go, oh, just calm yourself and everything will get better.
Right. No, I mean, and what you just said is, you're an I. I thought you were talking about Myers-Briggs, so you're an I as an introvert. I'm like, you are not an introvert. I am a deep introvert, but I am a D on the DISC profile.
I was referring to DISC. I'm sorry.
Yes, right. Yeah. And so part of that is, think about, we all use the term emotional intelligence, which I guess in shorthand is aware of self, aware of others, and aware of the impact you have on the room. Well, it starts with being aware of self. And if I am a D, a very high D, and I am having a conversation with a very high S, I need to be aware of that, and I need to flex towards the S. And if the S is flexing towards the D, we meet somewhere in the middle.
Right.
But the beginning of that is, am I aware that I'm a D? And there's good about a D. I get stuff done. Mm-hmm. I'm very direct, and I get stuff done fast. The dilemma of being a D is I can be a little abrasive sometimes. I can be overbearing. And if you don't do it with me, I'll just do it myself. Right. And if I'm aware of that, then I embrace the strengths of my personality profile, if you want, or my tendencies. I embrace them and I use them. I maximize their potential. But every personality trait or tendency also has a challenge. Right. And am I aware of that challenge? And if I'm talking to another D, we can be fast, we can be abrasive, I don't have to flex at all. It's easy. But if I'm talking to an S or a C on the DISC profile, I darn well better flex a little bit and move towards them, take a little more time, take a deep breath, right? Create some space, especially for the S's and the C's. But that doesn't mean that the S's and the C's just get to say, well, Kevin, flex to me. If the S or the C says, oh, I'm talking to Kevin today, I better not be so offended. I better speed things up a little bit. And I'll be really direct with him. And then we flex. So the beginning of it is, are you aware of your tendencies, both the strengths and the challenges? Right?
100%. That's why having a coach, they can tell you exactly. You can't. I mean, I thought I was pretty aware, but I didn't really know how not aware or unaware I was. And so let's say I'm listening and I'm totally like, Kevin, I understand what you're saying. The vagus nerve. Like, I have these quick reactions. I know they're not good. How would I even begin to use this? Talk me a little bit through the how. Like, what would you coach somebody on?
Well, the how really is, and we know today more and more, especially, it's weird because then we get into the whole sleep patterns and breathing and what we're learning at nighttime with heart rate variability is how much you are in sympathetic or parasympathetic tone. So, and how much air and oxygen and breathing makes a difference. And so really step one, although it sounds so simple, it's not so simple. It is, are you breathing? And are you taking some diaphragmatic breaths? Are you a shallow breather? And is your pulse racing? Or are you really taking a few diaphragmatic breaths? And then, you can call it meditation if you want. I'm a huge fan of meditation, but whatever, or you can just call it grounding.
Right.
So what habits are you creating so that you could be setting your watch, right? I mean, it's got it on there, but what are you doing to create new habits to remind you, oh my gosh, I need to be in parasympathetic tone. I need to take a few deep breaths. I need to tap into my vagus nerve.
Yeah.
And although it sounds simple, it's not, but that is about the simplest way to start it is think about how you're breathing, because that always gets you into parasympathetic tone.
100%. And so, and we've had a lot of great experts on. I mean, you talk about Becca Baca or anybody who's aware of this, the breathing piece, and even Uchi is a great friend of the Best Practice Show. And we spent a whole day talking about breathing. And you're exactly right, because when I get stressed, that's my first thought is breathe in. And I'm not a great athlete, but I was a triathlete at one time, and I had a coach. Again, the more deep breaths, you could actually see your heart rate goes down. Mm-hmm. There is a huge impact of how breathing works on the body. You can actually think. And it's so funny because my brain is exploding as you're talking, because Covey, now I'm going to totally butcher Covey's quote, but he said something to the effect of the brilliance in the world happens between stimulus and response. There are going to be things that happen to you all the time. What separates the best from the rest is how they respond to stimulus. So when you get an intense stimulus, or if you think about an airline pilot, I've been on a lot of flights that I know weren't going well. And the guy would get back on, or the woman would get back on, hey, sorry about that. When I know they were probably like, holy moly, type of a thing. So there is a place in here where we've got to just pause and breathe. And I know it has those reactions. Am I going to pull most of my thinking to the front of the brain when I can do that? Is that what happens?
Well, yeah. And think about in dentistry, since that's probably most people who are listening here is, and the term, and I will butcher it as well, is how do you increase the space between stimulus and response? Mm-hmm. Right? That's what we want to do. We want to create just a little more space between stimulus and response.
Yep.
And think about that in the operatory. Think about that when something's not going well with your dentistry, or even when something's going well with your dentistry and you get the buzz or the ear thing or the pop-up, or your hygienist right behind you and says, I'm ready for an exam. And you're thinking about, you got the other patient here and the other patient there. And sometimes there's not a lot of space between stimulus and response.
Right.
Until there is.
Right.
And how do you do that? And that is exactly in that scenario. It is take a deep breath, get back into your frontal cortex, and your hygienist is not a saber-toothed tiger. Mm-hmm. The fact that the cord is not going in on the distal buccal of 18 is not a saber-toothed tiger. The fact that you're even really close to the pulp, luckily in dentistry, it's not brain surgery. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to belittle dentistry, but it's not a saber-toothed tiger. Our emergencies, our hygienists, everything that goes on in a dental office is not a saber-toothed tiger, right. But we respond like it is. Instinctively, we respond like it is because we're humans. So what can we do to realize that it's 2022 and it's not a saber-toothed tiger and get back into your frontal cortex?
Yeah. And so you've been in dentistry for a long time. You've worked with a lot of great dentists. And I think where you're going with this, as we talked before we hit the go button, I do see a lot of people in flight mode more than ever. And I don't know if that's a function of what we put into our brains or eyes or whatever. And I also do worry about the teenage kids, because they're not a lot of them are in just like relaxed mode. I mean, some of them are, but it's very interesting the amount of stress we put on ourselves, that everything is so intense right now type of a thing. Are you seeing those trends with dentists and, younger professionals as you're out there?
Oh, well, you said just exactly what it is, and I mean it's all over the literature, so we can bastardize it or mess it up. You and I can. We're great at that, but we know in 2022 that everything we expect an immediate response. If we text somebody, we think we have to, or if we get text, we have to text them right back. If we need to know something, we can get it right now. We're always on our cell phones. There's always constant stimulus, and I think that's why it's resurging in a different way right now, is from what I read and from what I know, there's not a worse time in society for us to be in sympathetic tone. I mean, it really is. We really do feel like there's a saber-toothed tiger. Our bodies really are back to caveman times, except right. It's not a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
There's just so much stimulus going on right now. So I think it's worse than ever. And of course I have kids too, and I work with dentists, and then think about the team members of all ages and how they're dealing with it. it's I don't want to be negative. In fact, my hope is to contribute to the happiness and health of people, which is there's hope, right? Let's
100%.
re-tap into the vagus nerve, right? Let's
Yeah.
acknowledge it.
Yeah, and as you do this work, this is one of those things that you just don't learn once and go, "Oh, I got it." This is very much like yoga or like you've got to practice this every day, don't you think?
Yes. I mean, it is like I think it's even more than yoga. I think you have to practice it. You can't do, most of us don't do yoga throughout the day every day. We do yoga once a day. However, this is something, it's like a lot of mini yoga sessions throughout your day.
Right.
You don't just meditate in the morning, although Kimberly and I do most days, although we've been off for the past couple of weeks. But maybe it's like a mini meditation through the day. That's what breathing is.
Yeah. And can you speak? So I want to go back to, I did yoga at one time. I got to get back on the yoga train. I think it has unbelievable benefits. I do not meditate though. And Bill Robbins and a lot of my great friends are like, dude, you have to. And I actually had a team member recently say, I used to like giggle when people would say meditate, and now she's doing it and she swears by it. Can you talk about the benefits of regular meditation and how it supports this concept?
Oh my gosh. Well, yes, and it really is a lot of what we've been talking about, which is, I mean, there's a lot of definitions of meditation, right? And I've done a lot with it, and learned a lot with it, and I've had my ups and downs with it, like everything else, really consistent and then inconsistent. But in short, it trains you to just tap into your breath and to let things come and to let things go, right? And to just be aware of that. Wow, there's a lot of thoughts going on right now, but you don't judge it.
Right.
You don't try and keep them out. You just realize, whew, there's a lot going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just get back to my breath again. Oh, there's that same thought just came in again. Okay, great. Let it go. Get back to your breath again. Sometimes even before you take your next breath, you're like, there it is again. Okay, well, there it is again. Let it go. Come back to your breath again.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really, and you can set a timer. The first time I did it back in, the first book I read when I was just going through a lot of crap, I bought the book that was called The 8-Minute Meditation. And I read it. This had to be in 2010 or so, maybe 8, 9 or 10. And you just set a timer for 8 minutes. And the first time you do it, you're thinking, 8 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh my God, how can I sit there for 8 minutes? Now I'm sad when Kimberly and I don't have time to do it for 20 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. And it's never long enough right now. But that really is, in essence, that's what it is. It isn't to calm you down. It is just to sit and follow your breath and get in the habit of following your breath and let things come and let things go. And as you let them come and let them go, pretty soon you realize you followed your breath longer than you did last time. And it feels great. And maybe you don't today, and that's okay today.
Right. And I'm full of cliches today, but you got to pick your battles. And where I used to embrace every battle, and with a family of 6, including myself, with a lot of women, I used to battle every battle. And then I'm like, that's not such a big battle. And then my second thought is, I've got to establish some calmness when they're fighting about what each one of them is wearing or whatever, like even the simplest things, but also you translate that work into being in a dental practice. I mean, it can cascade pretty bad. It can cascade from a conversation in the morning into something else. And then before you know it, you got a couple team members triangulating in the back. And then it's just not a healthy thing. I think the important thing is, going back to what you said, is number one, knowing who you are. Self-awareness is really important. And then knowing what's happening when you're in the back of your brain and the vagus nerve isn't in the right place. And then how do I use this positively to create a better practice and a better life, ultimately?
There you go. Yeah. And I got to tell you, there are several, practices are different. I'm very passionate about it. So if I'm going to work with a practice, I can't not bring it in. But I don't force it on them. I facilitate it, right? I help them see the benefit. But there are a few practices right now that I'm working with that literally, they'll start a morning huddle with 3 deep breaths. Yeah. They'll start every team meeting with a good 5-6 minute meditation, whether it's guided or unguided, guided by me, guided by the dentist or something there, but that becomes part of who they are, right? And there's a couple practices that I'm working with right now, one in Philadelphia and one in Columbus, that are, they will do some deep breathing with their patients before injections.
That's
because they
great.
believe so firmly in it. Well, that changes the whole conversation with the patient.
Right.
They see you differently. They see that you're different. They see, and that, I mean, it's not what it's all about, but you want to talk about a practice builder. You want
Mhm.
to talk about people who are doing whole health or health-centered dentistry. You start having conversations like this, and it's not just about fixing the teeth anymore.
Yeah.
You get to help them be healthy. But at the same time, if we're not doing that for our teams, then there's a disconnect when we're trying to do it with our patients. So for me, it is a lot about start with you first, and then are you doing that with your team?
Yeah.
Are you helping them grow and be healthy? And then you can integrate it with your patients a little bit easier because everybody sees the benefit in it.
Yeah.
But I think the people we impact most are the people we're with 8 hours a day. The people we influence more are the people that are hanging around with us in fight or flight all day long. And if we're all in parasympathetic tone, the day is better for everybody, including the patient.
100%. You know, and if you're doing that, you're not only attracting the type of people that fit your value system, it's exciting for you to talk. And it's funny that you say that because I just had a conversation with a dentist, and his son is very much a whole health dentist. And so
Cool.
people were like a little skeptical. He's killing it, like killing
Yes.
it with the number of people that are coming to him saying, I want to be healthy. I understand this. And they're willing to pay out of pocket for this particular type of professional. So I think it presents an incredible opportunity in dentistry if you're passionate about it, right?
Oh, for sure. If you want to go full loop right now from what we started with, when your patients, when you know your why, when you know why you get out of bed every day,
Mm-hmm.
and you can put a couple of words to it and you really feel it, and then your team and your patients feel it. They're like, oh, this person is different. They really love helping people be healthy. They love whatever it is. When you know your why and you can share your why, your patients will feel that and they'll be excited to refer other people to you and they'll be excited that you're helping them be healthy, right?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's when you go to work and you don't even pretend for a fraction to be somebody else. You're just who you are, and you're helping
Your
people
authentic
that
self.
care about the same things, buddy. This
That's
is
right. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
last thoughts you have on the vagus nerve and where we should put it?
Well, yeah, I always have one last thought about it, which is I think that when we, walk your talk.
Mm-hmm.
If you're asking your team and your patients to do it and you're not doing it, there's a disconnect, right? We call that a hypocrite, right?
Right.
You're not walking your talk. And my hope for every dentist, but team members is, they're the same for me, but it's mostly dentists that listen to your podcast, I think. And start with yourself.
Yeah.
Just because if you start with yourself, your team will pick up on that. And then you'll be a different leader and you will be able to help people move towards health because that's what we're doing. We're helping our patients move towards health. But if we're not doing it for ourselves in some way, shape, or form, whether it's systemically, nutritionally, psychologically, and yet then we're asking our patients to do it, there's a disconnect and they pick up on that. And so
100%.
if you're taking just a tiny step towards health, then you can look your patient in the eye and say, man, I know, me too. It's not easy, but I'm
Yeah.
in it with you.
One,
And
one,
so,
100%. And so here comes some more
Mhm.
cliches, but like the whole, when you're on an airplane and the masks come down, you don't put a mask on somebody else. You put it on yourself first so that you can actually help more people. And the same thing, while these are all important concepts and you're motivating me today, I mean, sleep and exercise, those are two of my cornerstones. I'm always thinking, look, I need at least 6 hours of sleep. That'll make me a great human being, and an hour of exercise, which isn't selfish. You know, some people might go, no, it's not. You know, if I can get to bed at 10 and get up at 6 or even 5 and exercise and get an hour in, I'm 10 times the husband, 10 times the dad. 10 times the leader at work. And so I think your point is spot on. You got to exercise, you got to take care of yourself first so that you can take care of others.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if you were to throw in a little 10 minutes of meditation
I'm in.
in there,
I'm in.
see what happens.
See
what happens.
But I get calm just talking to you. You're so chill. You know what I mean? Like you're just relaxed.
I fake you out. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, buddy. I always enjoy our conversation. You always leave me with something to think about, and I hope you guys got the same today. So, Kevin, if somebody's never seen you or followed you or watched you speak, I'm going to say you guys got to see this guy in action. You're going to love it. He's a great thinker. But how the heck do I follow you? What do you do? How do I find out more about where you are?
Well, of course, everybody's got a website these days, so it's ksquaredfacilitation.com. And Instagram on K-Squared Facilitation as well. And you just look up dental coaching, K-Squared Facilitation, you will find me. And or you just call, or they can call you and just find out how to get a hold of me.
No, check out K-Squared. And that is true. I mean, you got a great website. You got a great thing going on. And so, buddy, I'm going to have you back again and again and again. I love having you be on here. So thanks, brother.
I love chatting with you. I always love chatting with you. It always makes my day. And it really does.
Well, I appreciate you. And hopefully we can have a beer together at some point, or a glass of wine, or we'll meditate together. How's that?
How about all the above? Let's go all the above.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, stick around. Always say goodbye. Wait, don't go yet. Don't go yet. Hold on. So stick around. Always say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show podcast. I am so crazy grateful that I get to do this. And you guys keep showing up. So keep sending me suggestions for things that you guys want to see. And if you enjoyed today with Kevin, which I know you did, just do us a favor and hit this. I almost said hit the square button. Hit the share button, hit the square button. But until we see you guys next time, I hope you have a great day and keep watching the Best Practice Show podcast. You guys enjoy your day.